Hi, I'm Paul. Yesterday, my teacher pointed out something to me, which I thought was quite important. And he said that we all have to remember that we're all in the same consciousness. We're all at the same consciousness. So, even though I've done a lot of work and I may appear to be more self-aware than some other people, or there's also many people more self-aware than me, we've also got to remember that all of that is coming from consciousness. So beneath it all, we're all in the same place. So therefore, you're as much consciousness as what I'm consciousness. And I know that for a lot of people it might not seem like it, so maybe you can look at me and say, yeah, but you're quite calm, and I've not reached that point yet, and therefore I'm not as much consciousness. But there is a difference, I do agree, and it does appear to be the case that we are all at different levels of consciousness, but we're actually all consciousness and not actually different levels. So why is it that some of us seem to be quite busy, and yet some other people seem to be quite relaxed and at one? So let's take a look at what's going on and start off at the place of consciousness. So we could all say that we're all at the level of consciousness in the beginning, at any moment, at all the moments. But then what happens after that? So then we could look at this in the sense that consciousness is the subconscious mind. So the subconscious mind sees that everything is one except the whole picture and so many other different things. But we also have a mind that fragments, that thinks. So the idea of this is we all are, or we all have that sort of same subconscious mind, but some of us aren't able to stay there because we've got this chattering, this constant talking, which is okay. So what the problem is this chattering mind seems to distract us away from what's hidden underneath, which is consciousness. And this chattering mind, thought, seems to just drift us away all the time from the present moment. So in a sense, we can say that thought is time. Psychological time, that is. That's not quite exactly it. Because we can still have thoughts as I do, and not drift away into the thoughts. So a thought comes and I put it down. And in this way I stay in the present. So the problem is with psychological time is when the thoughts arrive and we attach to the thoughts. So then we drift away from the present moment. So why do we feel the need to cling on, attached to our thoughts and ideas. That's because we don't want to be in the present moment. So many of us have some negative thoughts, some thoughts we don't want to look at, some parts of us we don't want to look at. And when that moment arises, sometimes this happens even before we become conscious of them. We start to drift away into thought, running away, grasping onto the next thought, trying to dodge this moment by thinking of the past or thinking more into the future. So this thinking mind, which always looks outwards, which always tries to grasp onto the next best thought, next idea. You see, this is what's keeping us away from a subconscious mind, from looking within. So when something arises in the subconscious mind, and we don't like to look at it, then we start grabbing onto external thoughts, and then make the thoughts even more. Now notice I say grab on, because this is where the attachment becomes to the thoughts, because you no longer want to be this person in this moment with something from inside creeping up. So to leave this moment, you cling on to the thoughts, being the external thoughts, and then you get carried away. And it's this clinging on to the external thoughts that is what we call time, going into the future or going into the past, that's making you run away from what's really happening inside. And this is the same as what's happening when we start seeking out for spiritual help or non-duality or whatever else we're seeking. And I say the word seeking because at this point of seeking for a spiritualist teacher, the best spiritualist teacher, we're seeking outwards. And this is that thinking mind, which is only really trying to run away from ourselves. So at this point, we're still saying, I don't want to look in. I want to go and find that spiritualist teacher, and hopefully he'll tell me where I want to end up without looking in. This doesn't work. This is kind of like saying you have a problem at home. So you go to the pub to get away from it. But at some point then you've got to go back home again. So the idea of this non-duality or becoming one really is about looking inside. When you look inside, it probably gets a little bit more complicated, because when you do self-inquiry, we're still using thought. We're not clinging on to it. So the difference with this thought of doing self-inquiry is, firstly, we wait for that thing that we desperately want to run away from to bring itself enough to the surface just to make a little bit of an understanding of it. And then we still wait and look at it. And then some thought starts to arrive. So then you could start thinking through a pattern. You could perhaps think, well, where did this thought come from? And that's a thought. But that's okay, because we're not clinging on to these thoughts to drift us away into the time, into the separation, into the future, into the past. We're using this thought just to stay with that thought, stay with the present. But there's also another aspect to it as well. Because both using thought and the other aspect of feeling, we combine them together to make an understanding. And this feeling, it's really hard to talk about this because it's hard to put it into words. But when you're doing this type of thinking, the thoughts are a little bit broken up because you allow this space to accept the feelings, accept that it feels okay. You start to feel the understanding in it. But like I say, we still do need some thought process in that, but it's very different because you don't run away from where you are with the thoughts, clinging desperately onto them to get away from the thing that you really don't want to look at. I don't know whether you've noticed that in this day and age we spend an awful lot of time on our phones, computers, playing games and TV, YouTube, whatever else. This isn't very helpful for us because that's the very thing that makes us seek outwards. Why is it we seek outwards and not inwards? I don't know if I'm actually right on this, but personally I would actually think that it's shame. There's all this idea in the world of how you're supposed to be somebody perfect, how to make it, be successful, all of these things chasing outwards. And yet, we're only human. A lot of these things we're not going to be able to reach. But yet, we still seek outwards in things like YouTube, the best teacher. And we find the best teacher, and then all we're doing is reminding ourselves that we're not like them and we're not good enough. Bringing back the shame. So I think a lot of seeking is pretty much to run away from who you really are. And I think the reason why we want to run away from who we really are is because we're worried what we'll find. Worried that we won't be good enough. Worried that we won't be loved or accepted. So therefore we just seek out for some sort of thought or idea to keep us occupied, to keep us running away from ourselves. And yet all this time all we're doing is going round and round in circles, never finding the way out. So to me, all this idea of non-duality and spirituality really does need to start off with just picking away the things what arrive inside. Because what's arriving inside is what is and what's happening, and it's this moment. And I know this is very hard to do. I would definitely recommend therapy, but some of us can't do that. And before you feel ashamed about therapy, I think that therapy can be very helpful for everybody. But one of the other ways I've been recommending quite a bit lately is meditation. And I think firstly we need to start off with just staying with meditation, just simple meditation, because when you start meditating, you start creating this space away from the attachment, away from the thoughts or the attachment thoughts. And when you start to create this space, you strengthen the subconscious mind. You're able much more easier to bring yourself back to the subconscious mind, where you could bring yourself back to the moment. Bring yourself away from the thoughts. So at times when it does get a little bit too much, you can bring yourself back and create that space and make a separation from the attachment. And then once you've reached this point of being able to strengthen this separation, then you can start looking into some of the things which arise. A lot of us just keep on jumping into this non-duality and then hearing, well, there's no me, or it's just an illusion, and thinking, yes, finally some freedom, just to find out that it comes back. Because the most important work of this is to do the looking inwards. Anyway, thanks very much for listening.